Let's talk about Vulkan. No, not that Vulkan. No, not that Vulkan either. That one. If you've ever played a PC game, chances are you interacted with DirectX. But what if I told you there was a graphics API making Linux gaming not just possible, but actually better than Windows in some cases? So let's talk about what Vulkan is, why it matters, and how it works. Vulkan is a graphics API like DirectX or OpenGL that acts as a translator between your CPU and GPU. The game engine sends rendering commands, and the graphics driver and GPU executes on those commands. They're designed to give developers more direct control over the hardware while reducing CPU overhead. It was developed by the Kronos Group as a successor to OpenGL. Originally based on AMD's Mantle API, later donated to Kronos in 2015. Now you've probably never heard of Kronos Group, but don't let that lead you to believe that they're not a big deal. Here are just a few small names that are a part of that group: NVIDIA, AMD, Intel, Valve, Sony, Microsoft, and Epic Games. So now let's talk about how Vulkan actually works and how Proton uses Vulkan to run Windows games on Linux. Proton, made by Valve, acts as a bridge converting DirectX games into Vulkan. Proton is based on Wine, but with heavy optimizations and additional tools like DXVK and VK3D3 to improve performance. The tool DXVK that I mentioned, or DirectX to Vulkan, is a translation layer that converts the DirectX 9, 10, and 11 API calls into Vulkan API calls. It's critical for those older Windows games that run on DirectX 9, 10, and 11 that don't natively support Vulkan. Now the other tool that I mentioned, VKD3D, I probably said 3D3 earlier, and that was probably my dyslexia. Now VKD3D Proton is a fork of the original project, optimized by Valve to convert DirectX 12 games into Vulkan. Unlike DXVK, which handles older DirectX versions, VKD3D is specifically designed for DirectX 12. So let's take a modern game, for example, like Cyberpunk 2077, that really focused on DirectX 12, making it a DirectX 12 only game. Now without VKD3D Proton, it would not run at all on Linux, right? But with it being available for us Linux gamers, it runs at near native performance on Linux. And in some cases, running the game on Linux actually makes it perform better than on Windows. This makes Vulkan so much better than its predecessor, OpenGL, in every way. Vulkan handles multi-threading better, meaning smoother frame rates. It has lower CPU overhead, meaning more efficiency. It has more direct GPU control, improving frame pacing and latency. It took Linux gaming to another level, while also keeping up pace with what DirectX was up to. Now, why are some game developers today considering incorporating Vulkan into their projects? Developers may be considering the licensing fees that go along with using Windows products versus the free and open source nature of Vulkan. Also, as Windows becomes more and more corporate and cloud-based and less focused on gaming, Linux is becoming more and more gamer-friendly every day. That means more and more Windows desktops are now becoming Linux desktops, but we're also accounting for new devices like the Steam Deck and Lenovo Legion Go S that run Linux natively. Just look at the sales numbers of the Steam Deck and head over to ProtonDB where you can see the compatibility list for Linux just growing every day. Now keep in mind, this whole DirectX versus Vulkan thing is not just a Windows versus Linux thing. I kind of framed it that way just to make it easier to understand. But Vulkan runs on everything. Vulkan runs on Linux, Windows, Android, and even Mac OS. And that's what makes it so powerful. I fully switched over to Linux about 7 months ago, but let me know in the comments, what OS are you gaming on right now, and are you considering switching over to Linux or just trying it out? Now check out this next video when I actually made the switch. Peace.